Today, so what we're going to talk about today is one of the bigger news stories of the last few weeks, which was Bill 60.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about Bill 60, Tyler.
So it's all over the place, and you get comments from landlords that are kind of celebrating, and you're getting comments from tenants that are, they're scared, they despise the new laws, and I guess it's up for debate whether it's going to be good or bad. Welcome to the TNT Real Estate Podcast, where we spark conversations that set you up for real estate success. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Tanya, and each week we bring you expert tips on navigating Northern Ontario's real estate market. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, we've got the tools to help you thrive. Welcome back to the TNT Podcast. I'm Tanya, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Tyler, who I am cursing right now. Last week we were talking about, I was asking you, how are you? What have you been up to? And you've been telling me about how you're sick.
Right.
And now I feel like I've caught his cold. Thank you very much.
You should stop following me around.
Well, I try not to. I traveled. I was away, and
Right.
I thought I avoided the bulk of it.
Where were you? Let's get into that.
Okay.
Because that sounded fun.
Yes, that was amazing. We really missed you a lot. Wish you had come. We were at the Realtor Advocacy Day and the Powerhouse Conference in Toronto with the Ontario Real Estate Association. So it was essentially a day of learning about issues that we want to advocate for as a group of realtors with one voice. What are the issues that OREA is spearheading really and lobbying the government? And then we had a day of great talks, a lot of political discussion. We had our premier talk about all of his visions for our beautiful province, including tunneling under the 401,
Right.
which is apparently going to be a thing.
My brain is too small to figure out how that actually happens.
I don't know. Well, they just have to go to Norway, apparently, because Norway had like 1 million tunnels when we were there.
Oh.
They just tunnel right through the mountains.
Right.
So I'm sure there's some good
That is cool.
Norwegian engineers who can develop it.
They need it down there, so that's good.
Yeah. So it was interesting. There was, obviously the premier spoke. Every leader of the parties, each party had a chance to speak as well. And then they brought on some political pundits talking about sort of issues in Queen's Park and things that they're seeing. The iPro scandal was one of the things that was brought up. Certainly. Minister Flack talked about it a little bit, and then of course the premier talked about how this should never happen again.
Right.
And hopefully they're going to implement, what's necessary so that consumers' deposits can be safeguarded.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, but it was really good. There was a lot of, vision, a lot of engagement. We had the official opposition NDP, Merritt Stiles, speak. She spoke very passionately about sort of public-private partnerships and nonprofit housing and off-market housing, non-market housing. I love a good project like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was really good. We had our mayor. Mayor Lefebvre was on a panel with himself, and there was the mayor for Guelph and the mayor from Cornwall.
Okay, cool.
So you had Guelph, which is a little bit larger, sort of medium-sized city, and then Sudbury, and then Cornwall, which is a very small but growing city. So it was really interesting to hear kind of like their struggles with real estate development and affordable housing as well.
Yeah, I guess I feel like they would be very similar but different at the same time, especially Guelph and Sudbury.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
I feel like Guelph is one that we can really sort of like look to and see like what have they done, because they've grown, a little bit faster certainly. And one of the things, I think we talked about this last year was modular housing.
Right.
Modular housing being an affordable option for more housing development. And actually the city of Guelph is one where they're doing a lot more modular housing. And then, our mayor spoke about the Lorraine Street project and another project that they have, or two projects I think they have on the go with respect to modular housing.
Yeah, I feel like there's almost like a stigma with modular, and people think they're like trailers. Like modular, like when you think of modular, it's like, you live in a trailer-ish thing. But it's like totally different now.
The level at which they can build these modules, essentially, right? They build them in factories, so they're a lot more, plumb, a lot more perfect. They're not subject to elements. There's a lot more quality control in the building. Certainly it's a different process to take these modules then and put them on site. But, when you look to these other cities that are doing it and successfully, maybe it's something that we can learn. I think the mayor did speak about trying to encourage that type of construction here a little bit more, and maybe even developing a bit of an industry, which would be kind of cool.
Right. Yeah,
to see that.
It's interesting. And I mean, obviously with the expense that comes with building and developing, it would be interesting to see the difference and if we can save a couple bucks, but also build, quality buildings as well.
Yeah, you think because we're so northern too, like we must be a lot more subject to the elements and certainly in the GTA.
Right.
And so if you can build under quality controlled environments, that could be a real bonus.
Right.
Yeah, apparently maybe the School of Architecture might be doing some type of thing as well. Yeah, we should look into that and discuss it a little bit further.
Let's do it.
So that's interesting. But today, so what we're going to talk about today kind of leads into all this stuff, which is one of the bigger news stories of the last few weeks, which was Bill 60.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about Bill 60, Tyler.
Oh, it's all over the place, and you get comments from landlords that are kind of celebrating, and you're getting comments from tenants that are they're scared, they despise the new laws, and I guess it's up for debate whether it's going to be good or bad. In my opinion, it looks like it's going to bring a little bit more balance back to the landlord-tenant issues that we've been facing for the last decade in Ontario, or even I guess maybe the country. But yeah, I mean, I was listening to a couple podcasts, a couple news stories on it, and like the people that are for it are saying like the tenants still have all the rights that they had before this bill. They're just, the timelines are different. There's a couple different rules. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously it's up for debate for whoever.
Yeah.
But
I think we might see like in the next several months or maybe a year or so how it actually is implemented and how it changes. One of the biggest things is sort of, if we talk to people who are looking at becoming a landlord, or maybe even you're talking to a small landlord, people are scared if you hear about those, I hate to use the term like professional tenants, the tenants who you hear about in the news that just don't pay rent as, that's just their MO. They just don't do that. They don't pay rent or they destroy a place. And so that's not the majority of tenants, not by any means. It's a very, very small minority of people who do that. But you hear one or two stories and it just turns people off from becoming a landlord.
Right.
And so it stops people from putting additional housing units on the market. But if we can sort of reform the RTA and move things along faster, maybe it won't be so scary for landlords to get into the market.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it'll do better for the current tenants who are, law-abiding tenants who pay rent. I mean,
with the same token, like the stories that you hear about the professional tenants, you also hear just as many, if not more, about I don't even want to call them I guess slumlords, not even professional landlords, but the bad characters on both sides are what gets the news headlines, not the great tenants that you can have and not the great landlords that you can have. So, but I mean, so Bill 60, it's technically law, but I guess like with conditions, it's obviously there's changes that needs to be made with the regulations. So it's not 110% finalized yet, but it is law. It's just not being practiced right now. So that's a big thing to consider. But so I'm just going to read this because it's like the perfect kind of summary of it. So it says this is from a news article. But in short, Bill 60 plans to speed up eviction hearings, tighten processes, and reduce delays at the landlord-tenant board, responding to backlog and slow processes that have frustrated landlords and tenants alike. So it's just tightening everything up, making things move a little bit faster, because we've all heard about those tenants that stop paying rent, and then 9 months later they're still living in the apartment, and there's all sorts of different delays that they can appeal, and they push, and then the sheriff shows up and they can't get them out, and it's just like they can delay and delay and delay. And so this is kind of just hopefully shortening the time frame in which things sort of proceed, right? So so one of the big changes is for the non-payment of rent. I think originally you would have 14 days that you could then settle up, and then
before they would file what is it called? The L1 or L2?
Yeah.
I forget, L1 or L2. But now that's been shortened to 7 days.
Right.
What are some of the other changes that speed it up? I believe there's something with respect to the N12, right? The use for the eviction for personal use.
Yeah. So for personal use, I guess Bill 60. So it used to be that you would have to give 90 days notice from the day that they pay rent, and also give them a month's rent at, when they move out. Now that the payment of the month's rent is now gone, but they have lengthened that to 120 days. Mm-hmm. So you have 4 months from the day that you pay rent to find another place, but the landlord doesn't owe you any money for that.
I think there is still a provision. Okay, so we're going to have to fact check this. Right. My understanding is if you wanted to evict for personal use, you could give 60 days notice, but you would still owe that tenant 1 month rent.
Right, okay.
In the event that let's say, for example, I don't know, you're gone on a sabbatical for a year or 2 years and you're coming back. You've rented out your home, you're overseas, you're coming back on a specific date.
Yeah.
You could give the tenant 4 months notice or more, certainly, and you could get your home back, for free, quote unquote, without having to pay them 1 month's rent.
Right.
So that's a good example of, when someone's genuinely renting out their home, they're away for a specific amount of time, they want to come back and occupy their home, and there's a provision for them to get it back without having to pay a compensation. Right. But I think, what we're seeing in the real estate market certainly is a lot more of people own a rental property, for example, that's rented out, or maybe it's just a single family home that's rented out and then they want to sell it.
Right.
So if they want to sell the home, and get a quicker closing, they are going to have to pay that compensation to the tenant.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I thought about this. I think it's good to give the tenants more than enough time. I think 4 months is plenty of time to figure out where your next move is. But in those areas where somebody wants to move into a rental unit, it's already a long enough process. But lengthening that to 4 months, like you'd have to close. Like your closing would be at least 4 months. Deal. Is long is way too long. So I'm not sure how that's going to affect the sale end of it.
Yeah, you would have to just pay them the compensation,
right? Yeah,
in order to get a quicker closing.
Yeah.
Another big one, I think this is something that we saw a lot in the delays in the processing, was that the tenant would have the ability to contest the eviction for non-payment of rent. And in this case, if they're going to be contesting the eviction, they have to pay 50% of the arrears in order to get the issues being raised at the hearing. So sometimes the tenant would say, like at the last minute, that, or they would file a counterclaim saying that, well, we haven't had these services for a while now, so that's why we're not paying rent. We've held rent because our fridge has stopped working or something of that nature.
Right.
You do have to pay, at least 50% of your arrears, and then you can bring up those new issues at hearing. Right.
So, that's one way that the tenants used to delay the process. So, like right before the hearing, they'd bring up, oh, my fridge hasn't been working or my air conditioner hasn't been working, whatever it is. So now to be able to bring that up, you're saying that they have to pay 50% of the arrears, and then they can bring something up.
Yeah, bring up the new issue.
I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
Another one, I think we kind of alluded to it a little bit more, but we can flush it out a bit, is the appeal time. So over and above the kind of 50%, if the tenants want to appeal the right to, appeal the eviction, that's brought up. They used to have 30 days, and now it's 15 days. Okay. So obviously, just tightening up the periods before, And now, I guess the tenant lobbyists are saying that 15 days is not enough to get a paralegal or whatever it is.
Maybe that just takes a bit more advocacy then for tenants, right? Because my understanding is that most tenants will have the ability to get a paralegal. I'm pretty sure. I don't think they have to pay for it necessarily. They're able to get legal help. There are networks and advocacy groups who will help tenants with that. So I think it's important, if there are tenants listening as well, I think it's important for them to also understand their rights and to know that if you do get a notice for eviction for whatever case, if it's, for non-payment of rent or for disturbances or that type of thing, find your paralegal or somebody who can give you that legal advice right away, and they will help you with the paperwork and help you stay on it, right? Because, we want to be on both sides for tenants and landlords, because we realize sometimes there are legitimate issues, certainly, that need to be raised, and a tenant doesn't know how to do that, especially if there's barriers to language or cultural barriers, that type of thing. My daughter, actually, she volunteers for this group in British Columbia, where they're called Together Against Poverty, I believe. And she does a lot of calling and helping tenants, understand maybe not understand their rights, but know what groups will help them with their rights, help them with their paperwork, and help them with, getting the heat back on or whatever the case may be if they're having issues, and provide the services that people need. So there are those resources certainly out there for tenants who might need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I think, it's important to stress, obviously, with all these services that they do have, that Bill 60 isn't a full overhaul. They're not losing any of the rights that they once did have, and all the different protections, the rent control, the tenants, rights to safe, maintained housing are all still there.
Yeah.
It's just, the people that aren't paying their rents or people that need to be evicted for whatever reasons, it's just going to tighten up some timelines.
It's more of more of a procedural overhaul rather than, taking away any rights. Just sort of moving things along faster to shift the balance a little bit more so that things will move faster. And, some of the advocacy work that we were doing, just this past week was talking about rental, overhauling the RTA, modernizing the Residential Tenancies Act, and also allowing for, or maybe even instilling, arbitration a lot faster. So when, a landlord and tenant do have a dispute and a tenant wants to withhold rent and the landlord's not delivering services, well, let's get them to arbitration faster, so that, first of all, we want the tenant to be living in a, nice, safe, clean, warm environment. And then we want it to be resolved. So I think, advocating for that mediation process is very important.
Yeah, if you can just talk, and we have, there are mediators that tenants or landlords can hire kind of privately, but to have something in the public sphere, even before, you have to spend 2 sessions with a mediator before you can get to the landlord tenant board or whatever it is. I think that would be huge, because a lot of the time it's just a miscommunication, and which is why realtors and stuff have a big part in all of this. Is that sometimes you just need to have that middle person that can take what you're trying to say, wrap it up, put a bow on it, and then send it to the other side. And it's, you would create so many less conflicts than you would if you were just kind of talking back and forth.
Oh, absolutely. You would seek a resolution. You would get a resolution so much faster if you had a third party just getting involved. Unfortunately, a lot of people get the incorrect advice on both sides, and that just leads to further frustrations.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. From the tenant's perspective, Bill 60 is obviously a little bit less time to react, from the 14 days to the 7 day, 30 days to 15. But I think, with conversations, it kind of goes with the mediation. I would say most landlords are not out there to say, why, and maybe it's a miscommunication portion of it, but it's why are you not paying rent? Is it did you have a bill that came up that it's an
unexpected car repair or something, right? Sometimes there's a real legitimate reason what's going on. Pay is maybe a little bit delayed. They just switched jobs. It's always good to have those conversations, and unfortunately, sometimes tenants don't feel. It's not easy. It's maybe not easy to have that conversation with a landlord. Yeah. So, if you're a landlord and your tenant's a little bit late for rent, just have a conversation with them. Ask them what's going.
Yeah, instead of being accusatory, just, be
and maybe develop a payment plan or something to sort of help out. So if a tenant is behind on rent and they want to dispute things, maybe there's repair or maintenance issues, now they'll have to prepay half of the arrears in order to get that process going. So that can be a little bit of a barrier as well, certainly.
Okay, so what would you say is the bottom line for Bill 60?
Yeah, I think in all of our discussions, it's been, to be proactive. landlords, review your leases, update your eviction notices, get your LTB templates all tightened up, and get your documentation in order as well. Tenants, know your rights, certainly. Keep records of all the payments, all the maintenance, any issues, certainly, that you've had with the property. Keep record of that as much as you can. Don't wait till the last minute to communicate with your landlord. Document that communication, certainly. And then if you have any issues with respect to maintenance, just seek the help that you need to get that resolved as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. So the best, obviously the best plan is just to be educated and get educated. Obviously, I think as Bill 60 rolls out and, goes into practice, things will change a little bit from where we maybe think that they're going to where where they'll end up. So I think it's important just to kind of stay ahead of it and stay educated and follow the news and follow what's actually happening.
And for the most part, it is still evolving a little bit. Yeah. So we'll just keep on top of what's happening, any changes that might be on the horizon. And hopefully we'll see a change in the landlord-tenant board and things progressing a little bit faster for all parties involved.
Right. So if you enjoyed this conversation on Bill 60 and you found this useful, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next week.